Hi everyone, this is Beverly Cole and I'm in the thick of it. Embossing powder, that is. We're going to make this beautiful card and we're going to use some super thick silver embossing powder. I'm starting with a piece of purple cardstock and I'm going to use my anti-static pillow here to remove the static. We're going to use one of my stamp sets. It's an old one, well, relatively old, from earlier 2018. It's called Koi Pond Friends, and we're just going to use one of the fish. But I'm not so much concerned with him looking like a fish in this technique. I'm going to make a layered background using embossing powders. And I'm just doing some random stamping with one of the koi fish. Inking it up, moving the paper is easier than moving the stamp. Kind of easier. Just random stamping the fish using VersaMark ink. I'm trying to get an even fishy coverage here. Now I'm going to take some mulberry embossing powder. Such a pretty, pretty color. Most women love purple. I have to be honest, that's kind of why I chose these colors. I thought you might like it. Now I'm going to heat set this nice and evenly. It's all melted. Let it cool a bit. And then we're going to stamp again with the same stamp. Of course, first the static-free bag. And now I'm going to use another color that I just love. It's called Belgium Cream. And again, random stamping. Now I want you to notice this time that I'm really not fussing about where I'm putting this, because I really don't care that these look like fish. I'm just wanting to make a pretty lacy background. So I quickly stamp again with VersaMark. I dump the Belgian cream on there, dump it off. Not too concerned about it at all. And then I'm going to heat set this after I clean up my mess. Good thing I have my glitter brush and the coffee filter. Okay, going to heat set this one. And then one more time. Same thing. Now this time I'm stamping even faster. Just filling it in with some Antiquities embossing powder, which is like an antique silver color. It's just beautiful. It's one of my favorites. Dump it on, da, 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 and see how the background will take on this really lacy look because of the way I designed the tails on these fish. And here's our background. Now we'll move on to our focal point. I've die cut these on some sticker kind of paper that we sell at Sparkle and Sprinkle. I die cut it so that the back of this is sticky. I'm using VersaMark and a pair of tweezers because this is going to be heated from the bottom. I'm using the super thick silver embossing powder, and we've got some new colors coming out in super thick. You're going to be amazed. I'm tapping it off a little, but I really don't want to tap it all off because it's super thick. I want it to kind of sit on the surface. The embossing powder will hold it after it melts, but a lot of it is not being held in place right now because it's so thick and I've layered it thickly. I sprinkled a little bit on where it came off, and I'm going to use my left hand with my heat tool and my right hand with my tweezers, heating the piece over my heat tool. I have more control when I keep my heat tool straight up and down. I have less of a tendency to burn myself. I try to keep it still. And now that the powder is mostly held in place, because I heat it from the bottom, I'm able to heat the top and melt the powder. Now you'll know it's all nicely melted when you can actually see it moving. I'm going in and out with my heat tool to kind of melt some bubbles. Now this can happen and be successful in one coat. However, it didn't work for me this time. I just felt like I needed another coat, so I'm going to go ahead and use some more VersaMark. For a smaller piece, you might have been able to just douse it with the embossing powder while it was still hot and it would stick, but because it's such a large piece, I really needed to use more VersaMark. So once again, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, carefully. Instead of waving my heat tool around and burning myself, possibly, I keep it straight up and down as if it were a little fire, and I'm moving my piece above it until it is heated enough to hold on to the powder. And once again, I'm heating it from the top. Now the next cool thing I'm going to do, after I get this all melted, I'm going to pick some of the embossing powder up with my fingers, and I'm going to sprinkle it in certain areas. The area needs to be hot, and then I'm partially melting it in. It makes a little bit of a mess because it's not all going to stay, and I have to make sure the spots are hot and melted before I sprinkle it on. By partially melting it, I'm getting some really interesting texture on my element here. So here it is finished. It's got some texture, and I'm able to peel the entire back off, which also removes all of that embossing powder that melted onto the back. If you use something that doesn't have a sticky back like this that you can peel away, then you have to deal with all that melted powder on the back, which makes your piece kind of lumpy, and it's hard to attach. You could attach it using a really strong glue, but it's really not an easy thing to do because of all of the detail. This made it easy, so now I'm just pressing it in place onto my background. And I turn it over here just to give it some pressure from the back, and it's in place. So we're not going to have the background showing through the middle of the hello. We're going to fill that hello in with the other piece from the die cut. And this also has the adhesive on the back because it was the adhesive was on there when I cut it. So again, using some VersaMark, getting a good coverage, I'm going to use the two colors that we used on our background. This is the Belgian cream, picking off a little bit of silver, and I had some silver stuck on my VersaMark pad. And this is the mulberry. Once again, using my tweezers, moving that so I don't blow it all around, holding it in my right hand, my heat tool in my left hand. I have discovered that this really works well for me. So here's our background, and here's our little element to fill in the hello. And look how easy that back peels off because it's crack and peel. And we just, using the jewel picker, very handy, I'm pressing my piece into place. So we've used embossing powder on every surface of this beautiful card. And we've tried some different techniques, making texture, using more than one color, doing random stamping to make a beautiful layered background. And there we go. But I wasn't quite satisfied with the amount of sparkle on this card. So I decided I wanted to do one more thing. out my koi fish again. And using a Nuvo large two-way glue pen. Two-way means it dries tacky. That's what you need for glitter, a tacky surface. I'm just stamping with the glue. And it doesn't need to be re-inked every time. You can get first, second, third generation out of this stamp with that glue. Some will be more detailed, some will be less detailed. It's a really fun technique. But I just want the sparkle. That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for sparkle. Okay, so I'm going to use some sterling glitter. And here's the finished card. Now have fun. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a video.